Hey everyone, it's Leonie here. Guess what I'm cooking today? So you just saw me pour the boiling water into this thermo jug. Now these are available on the mix shop. There is a new model coming which is all black to match our beautiful black TM7 Thermomix, and I really love this. Took me a while to buy one, but it's stainless steel down the bottom and it keeps your sauces and gravies and so on hot. Now I need for this recipe boiling water to activate the ingredients. So I have boiled my water in my Thermomix because I don't have a kettle, and now I'm going to be keeping this hot until I actually need it in the steps of the recipe. So yeah, it's great for, as I said, for sauces and gravies. There's nothing worse than when you make a beautiful roast dinner, for example, you make the gravy, everybody always wants seconds, right? And the gravy's cold. And I don't have a microwave, so I can't heat it up in the microwave. This is perfect for that. And it matches all our other stuff. So yeah, it's wonderful. Okay, so these are the gluten and grain-free bread rolls. Now, I absolutely adore these. As you know, I have to eat gluten-free. Some people can't eat grains because it can affect them. I'm kind of okay with grains, but again, grains can be like not the best carbohydrates depending on what grains you have. I have to tell you, these are absolutely awesome. They taste like real bread. Now if you're celiac or you have to eat gluten-free, you know exactly what I mean by that. There was a time when we were doing a kind of like practice cooking class to make bread, and we made all sorts of bread at the Thermomix office, from brioche to pizza dough to croissants, like all sorts of bready things. And the most popular bread was the gluten and grain-free bread rolls, which is testimony to how amazing they taste. Now I have hacked this recipe to make hot cross buns by adding in some honey and some sultanas, or whatever fruit you like, but I'm just making the normal bread rolls today. Firstly, because they taste amazing. Secondly, because I want to just have something that's a bread roll. And thirdly, because they're really low carb. There's 2 grams of carbs in each bread roll, which for me is important because I'm trying to reduce particularly my starchy carbs. So because the ingredients in this are psyllium husks and almond meal, it's like there's no fattening stuff in there. There's no sugar in it. There's just good stuff. So that's what I'm making today. I'm going to show you how easy it is to make them. Let's get started. I'm going to start off here. Don't need to preheat my oven just yet. I've lined my baking tray. I'm actually making this in 2 batches in my Easy Cook turbo oven. So I've already lined my tray. Now I've got almonds. So we're going to pop my almonds, and I found a lot of almonds. I'm just going to pop those into the Thermomix bowl. Let me just take you up and show you. So this is going to weigh, I'm going to tear that back. I need 300 grams of almonds, so let's go for it. Here. Can you see my screen? I hope so. Okay, so I had to get a few more almonds out of my almond stash. Oops, got a few too many. Let's just reach in and grab some. Nothing like, I did wash my hands before I made these. There we go. Now see how it's actually ticking off the ingredients? Because it's all there. Now I also need to add in some psyllium husks, just 50 grains, so I'm going to have to measure this pretty spot on because I'm not going to be filching this out if I miss. So I'm just going to pour slowly. Now the psyllium husks are what gets activated by the boiling water. A little bit over, but that's not going to matter. Pop that aside. A little bit over. Next. Now I know the next step is to basically grind these all down, or mill them as we say. So I put in whole almonds as you saw. Lid goes on. Green light on. Let me just push this down a little bit so you can see it better. And it's going to be noisy, so I might pause while this is on. Now you could tell while that was going, you can tell by the sound when it's actually getting close to being ground down. Now let's have a look at what that looks like. There you go. How's that? Ground almonds and psyllium husks, not only ground down but also mixed together. So what do we need next? We need 3 tablespoons. Let me get out my little measuring spoons that I've had forever. Rattle, rattle, rattle. And seriously, I love them. I should have enough baking powder because it takes 3 teaspoons this, so it's a fair bit of baking powder, but it also helps to activate all of that and make it nice and fluffy, which is what we're aiming for. So I've got 3 teaspoons. 1. Gosh, I've had these that are like, I don't know if they're Bakelite or if I think they're just plastic. And I know I don't like plastic, but there's everything on it, down to 1/4 teaspoon. 1, 2, 3. Put those in there. Awesome, done that. And then it wants 2 teaspoons, let me get my teaspoons back, of fine salt. Now look, don't be too precious about this because actually I'm going to just use this little spoon here, which is about 1/2 teaspoon. So I've got some really lovely Murray River salt flakes here. I was given this at an event actually, this box, and I love it. So that's about 1/2 teaspoon. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's probably enough because they were fairly rounded, those teaspoons. So I've done that. Oh yeah, that was supposed to be 1 teaspoon. I think I put in too much salt, but whatever. Too bad, so sad. How did I get that wrong? I think I put in 3 teaspoons. Well, you can never have too much salt, can you? We probably can, but whatever. Let's tick that off and go next. And we're going to blend all this together. Now, I'm someone who does like a little bit of salt. I think it brings flavour out. So this is just going to use the turbo mode. And it's basically sifting it together. Would have been better if I hadn't made that mistake while I'm doing this, but whatever. Okay, so this is foofing it all up next. Now we're going to add in 5 egg whites. Now, I don't like to have leftover egg yolks because I know you can make custard, but I don't like custard. So I buy these from Woolies or Coles, wherever. Actually, I got this one at Harris Farm Markets. It's just pure egg whites. They're you can freeze them because I'm not going to need the whole packet. Now, this contains 500 grams, and I've measured this out before. 5 egg whites is about 160 grams, and that's about like 3. I can make 3 lots of this recipe from this. And what I do with the leftovers is I measure it out in portions, and I have these rather nice little Ziploc silicone bags, decor ones that I got. and I just measure it up, freeze them. Next time I want to make these bread rolls, I just pull out one of the containers and off I go. So I'm going to actually measure this as 160, about 166 I think it is. Actually, I might just give it a bit of a shake first. Mix all that up and keep pouring. That'll do. So that's my egg whites in. And then I'm going to add in some apple cider vinegar. Now you might think this is a little bit odd to add in. Now I've got some Cornwall's organic apple cider vinegar with the mother. So the mother is kind of like that sludgy stuff you see on the bottom there. And that's all the goodness of the vinegar. So it's actually really good vinegar. If you can get organic apple cider vinegar with the mother, just to improve the health benefits to you. Now what this does to this recipe is it adds a slight sourdough flavor to it. Now even if I make these rolls as hot cross buns or fruit buns if you like, I still add the apple cider vinegar because it gives it a really, really beautiful taste. So I'm just going to measure in, tear that back. I'm just going to measure in 45 grams. Try not to go over on this. There we go. Much more better. Much more better. Okay. Next. Oops, next. And we're going to get, the Thermomix is going to knead this now. So for 20 seconds. And what that does is it actually stops, starts and mixes everything together that's in there. So there's a little bit of liquid in the egg whites and the apple cider vinegar, not a lot. So it's going to make kind of a sticky mess basically. But that's okay. That was quick, wasn't it? Next. So I'm going to show you what this looks like at the moment. So that's like the first knead, if you like, with it. It's crumbly and grumbly. So now we add in our water that I boiled. And this is the point at which I usually get and realize I forgot to boil the water. Thankfully this time I did remember in advance. And it's the benefit of having an extra bowl, blade and lid set. So at the moment we have an offer. If you host a home demonstration, you can actually get a second bowl, blade and lid set for your TM7 as a host reward. Now you do still have to pay something towards the cost, but it's much, much cheaper than the recommended retail price. So if you're interested, just reach out and ask me. If this offer isn't on anymore, too bad so sad, you can buy it from the mix shop later this year. But if I had forgotten to boil my water first, then what I would normally do is take off this mix, put my new bowl on, boil my water, come back to the recipe and continue. So fortunately I did actually boil it. So let's add in 375 grams. Now this is about 500 grams in this little jug, so I know I should have more than enough. She hopes. She hopes. Oops, bit over, whatever. Okay. It's a pretty good recipe if you kind of stuff it up a bit like I have. It doesn't matter. Okay, it'll just be a bit stickier and might take a little bit longer to cook. Now this is going to knead all that together. Okay, so we're ready and we're back. My kneading is done. Next. Now the dough is going to be sticky as it says, so I'll show you what that looks like now. So see, it looks quite different. It's all smooshed together. It looks a little bit like thick oatmeal, but it's actually pretty good. Now I'm just going to go and do the next part. Okay, so I have my trusty spatula here, and what I'm going to do is just plop all this out onto the Thermomat here. Now you can buy the Thermomats from the mix shop as well. See how it looks like, almost like jelly-like. Can you see that all right? See in there? There's almost nothing left actually, so once I scoop this all out, it's going to be mostly here. And look, one of the things you learn with your Thermomix is that if you don't get it all out and there's a little bit left, just chill. So let's grab that last little bit out. So you can see here it's pretty empty. There's a bit around the blades. I'm not going to die in the ditch over that. So what I have here is my mix. It's very sticky. You can roll it out with your fingers if you want, but I prefer to use my spatula. So what I'm going to do is kind of scoop it out and push it together. Now you want to make sure that it actually, this is a strange little recipe in some ways. If you don't smoosh it in together properly, what you can end up with is air pockets in it, and a bit like normal bread. If they haven't done that correctly with normal bread, you can end up with air pockets, and there's nothing worse than buying a loaf of bread and finding out half of it's air, and you've kind of like wasted your money. Now I'm going to come back to that in a tick. Okay, so you can see at the back here I've got my little tray, and I've kind of smooshed this out over the side here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just trying not to create air pockets. You can't really see that one, but I've just created a little bread roll. Now it helps if your hands are a bit wet when you do this, because like I said, it's a bit like sticky plasticine. Just going to pop that on my bread tray. Now I'm going to get myself another little piece here. This is really nice and warm, so if it's a cold day, it's a really good one to make on a cold day. So I'm putting my little bread rolls here. It's very tactile. I like that about this recipe too. Now look, it says it makes 12. It depends on the size of the rolls, obviously. Sometimes I tend to get about 10 because I make mine a little bit bigger. Just making sure there's no air pockets in that. I think there is, but anyway. I'm just going to pop that one on there. Come on, dudes, don't take up the whole lot of space. I know I'll get 6 there. It's very messy, but it's so much fun to roll these together. So just roll, fold and roll, opposite to Sarah Lee. Okay, let's take another chunk off. Push it, smoosh it together. It's getting quite sticky now. I need to wet my hands again. Actually, I might get a few more than a dozen out of this. Sometimes I get more than 12, sometimes I get less. Just depends on the size. So I've just made 6 there. I'm going to come back and put the rest of the bread rolls onto another piece of baking paper ready to go when I've cooked these. And I'll be back in a tick because I'm going to wash my sticky fingers. You can see the recipe here says divide into 12 equal sized pieces. As I said, I'm going to finish off those shortly. Next is to form each piece into a roll, put on a baking tray. I've done that. Now I'm baking it for 50 to 55 minutes at 180 until lightly golden brown. It does, for me, take about 55 minutes, and sometimes I find they're not quite cooked through. The best way to tell that is to actually take one of the rolls out of off the baking paper and turn it upside down. If it's a bit damp on the bottom, it's not quite done. And sometimes what I do then is actually put it onto the rack in my easy cook oven over here, which you can just see, and I'll just pop them straight onto the rack and pop them on for another few minutes just to finish cooking all the way through. Okay, I'm going to go and do the next step now. Okay, so you can see I've popped them on the tray in my easy cook oven. Now I'm just going, I did preheat this, sometimes I do. I'm just going to come up here. It's already, no, it's not turned on, turn it on. And I want to put it on to 180 degrees, which is here, and I'm going to put it on for 55 minutes. Actually, I'll put on for 53 and see how we come out with that. And there we go. So people, that's how easy it is to make these bread rolls. Now, if I'm going to make them as hot cross buns, I usually add in the honey or some kind of sweetener, because hot cross buns or fruit buns are actually sweet. I add that in when I add in the egg whites, and sometimes with the egg whites, actually I usually add it in with the boiling water because that helps to melt it down a bit, and then that all gets obviously kneaded in. And I also add in, I do the knead and then I put in the sultanas or fruit and then knead it for just a little bit longer, because it's not actually kneading in the traditional bread way. It's basically mushing it all together. Sometimes I do have to mix in the sultanas at the end as well, because sometimes they don't all go in. And so I just kind of smush it in as I'm making the bread rolls. It's pretty easy. I don't tend to do crosses. I did try the crosses on top once, making it with gluten-free flour and whatever else it said to do from another recipe. It was pretty foul. It was pretty yuck. The crosses came out like cardboard. It was really not nice. If I was going to do that again, I would probably just do icing crosses. I have done, when I was fancy schmancy, I actually cut really thin slivers of apple, and I cut across in the top of the bun before I baked it and slid the apple in. It kind of worked all right, but the apple did start to lift out a bit, and I mean, it was cute, but it didn't work too well. Anyway, whatever. I think I just do icing, or what I normally do, and that's just have the bread roll without anything on top. It's the thought that counts, isn't it? So that's it for me. Oh, actually, before I go, and I will show you these I'll do a photo of them once they're done. Before I go, I was going to say, with those egg whites, there's actually kind of like 15 egg whites in the carton. So if you divide the 500 grams by 3, kind of 160-ish each, and that's how I measure that out. Anyway, have an awesome Easter. Have a great weekend. That's it from me. Bread rolls. What I do with the rest, because I've only done 6 at a time, it has made 7 the rest of the recipe. But on my mat, which is really big, pick flies and stuff off, I'm just going to fold the mat in over the top and leave it there like that, nice and secure. There's my second piece of baking paper ready to go on top. Oops. And okay, I've come back to my Thermomix, which had shut down. I've started it up again and gone back to the recipe, and see down here, it's actually showing me that it's up to step 15 of 16. And all I need to do is press that, and it tells me, actually just before that it says bake, which I did, until they're lightly golden brown, and then allow to cool on a tray for 5 minutes before transferring to a wire rack. Next is serve warm or allow to cool completely before transferring to a sealable container until ready to serve. And that's it. That's the recipe. Now I do suggest that you do actually let them cool a bit, and you do cool them on a rack, because it just allows the air to circulate around them and underneath them, and just finish drying them out. I did mention earlier that I test the bottom of the bread rolls to make sure that they are actually cooked on the bottom, because sometimes you can feel it's a little bit soggy, and then I put it on for a little bit longer. Sometimes I'll turn them upside down so the heat from my turbo oven is actually reaching it, and then they're perfect. Yum, how good do they look? Now what I'm going to do is just peel one off here. Oh, they're hot. And I think they are actually cooked through. They're not soft on the bottom. So I'm just going to let them cool a little bit longer there, and then I'm going to pop them on a rack here and let them cool down completely. And then when they're cool, I'm going to have them with some smoked salmon, and they're going to taste amazing. That's it from me.